Hello friends, welcome to my channel, and in this session we are going to discuss about the development of foregut derivatives. So let us learn about the foregut derivatives under following headings. First we will see the revision of the division of definite gut tube. If you go to my channel, in the previous video we have discussed about the introduction to the development of the GI tract, how it happens, from which germ layer it develops, and what are the contribution of each germ layer to the layers of the gastrointestinal tract, and how it is forming the folding, why folding is there, what is the timing of folding of embryo, what is the purpose of folding of embryo, and how folding results in different changes in the cylindrical embryo. First, the embryo will be a trilaminar flat disc. It will be converted into a cylindrical embryo. We have seen that. Just briefly look at that video to understand this video better. And we will discuss about the foregut derivatives like development of esophagus, stomach, spleen, liver, duodenum, and pancreas. And let us see. So already you know, due to the head and tail fold and lateral folding, the part of the yolk sac, that is dorsal part of the yolk sac, is contained within the cylindrical embryo, and it communicates with the extra embryonic yolk sac. So the yolk sac becomes a narrow cavity. It has become now a internal yolk sac stalk, or yolk stalk we say, and it also has a external yolk sac. This is the external yolk sac, and this is the narrow yolk stalk, and this is the dorsal part of the yolk sac. Now it is divided into foregut, midgut, and hindgut, that we have discussed in detail in the introductory video. Here you can see how the flat trilaminar germ disc, embryonic disc is there, having ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And here you are seeing the folding in the sagittal plane, head fold and tail fold, and also there will be lateral folds resulting in the cylindrical embryo containing the dorsal part of the yolk sac that is involved in the formation of digestive system, and that is the yolk stalk, a narrow yolk stalk, and this is narrow yolk stalk there, and this is how the primitive gut tube is formed, and above it opens into the primitive oral cavity by buccopharyngeal membrane, below into the primitive anal canal or proctodium by the cloacal membrane. So the primitive gut tube is divided into foregut, supplied by the celiac artery, midgut supplied by the superior mesenteric artery, and hindgut, which is supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. And you can see this midgut loop is connected to the extra embryonic yolk sac by the Vitelline duct, and you can notice there hindgut supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. So cloaca is there, that is the undivided part of the post-allantoic part of the hindgut. That is what you are seeing here. So based on their blood supply, the primitive gut tube, which is now the definitive gut tube, it is divided into three parts: foregut, which is supplied by the celiac artery; midgut derivatives are supplied by the superior mesenteric artery; hindgut derivatives are supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. You can notice there the postpharyngeal part of the foregut is here till the second part of the duodenum where common bile duct opens, and remaining part from here to here, this is midgut, and from here to here it is hindgut. So each part of the gut tube is having the different blood supply. Foregut is supplied by celiac artery, midgut is by superior mesenteric artery, hindgut is by the inferior mesenteric artery, and you can notice here that entire gut tube is suspended by the dorsal mesentery from the posterior abdominal wall. Only the foregut part also has it also has the ventral mesentery along with the dorsal mesentery. So the caudal part of the foregut is involved in the formation of stomach. So later they are called as ventral mesogastrium and dorsal mesogastrium respectively. But during the developmental stage, these folds are called as mesentery. Whereas the mesentery is a term used for the peritoneal fold suspending the small intestine in adults. So mesentery means it's a primitive fold or a fold which is suspending the gut tube. Later, with the development of individual organs, it has got different names like mesogastrium, mesoduodenum, mesentery, mesocolon, like that. So the only part of the gut tube which has both ventral mesentery and dorsal mesentery during development is foregut. Now you can see the foregut part communicates with the primitive oral cavity by the buccopharyngeal membrane, that is stomoduodenum, and the hindgut communicates with the proctodeum by the cloacal membrane. So coming to the development of foregut derivatives, here we will see development of esophagus, stomach, spleen. Spleen is actually the mesenchymal derivative. It is not exactly the derivative of the endodermal foregut. So remember that it develops from the mesenchymal mass, but it is still supported by the splenic artery. That's why we'll have a brief discussion regarding the spleen here. Then development of liver, duodenum, pancreas. So duodenum, pancreas has contribution from both foregut and midgut. How, that we will see in detail in the further slides. So first, foregut derivatives. The foregut is divided into a prepharyngeal part and a postpharyngeal part. The primordial pharynx is formed by that, and it also gives rise to the larynx, trachea, bronchi and lungs via laryngotracheal diverticulum. The other derivatives of the postpharyngeal part of the foregut are esophagus, stomach, proximal half of the duodenum till the opening of the common bile duct, liver and biliary apparatus and pancreas, or you can say most of the dorsal pancreas, because some authors say ventral pancreas is derived from the junction between the foregut and midgut. So let us see the development of esophagus in detail. So during fourth week, what happens? A small diverticulum, endodermal diverticulum, appears in the ventral wall of the pharynx, that is known as the laryngotracheal diverticulum, and a septum gradually separates the respiratory diverticulum from the dorsal part of the foregut. So this tracheoesophageal septum is separating the ventral trachea from the dorsal esophagus. So tracheoesophageal septum is there. Then as a result of that, the pharynx, the primitive part, it is divided into a ventral portion called as a respiratory primordium and a dorsal portion into the esophagus proper. So you can notice here, you can see a diverticulum coming from the ventral wall of the pharynx. You are seeing the left lateral view here. So it enlarges and it forms the laryngotracheal diverticulum, and you can notice there how this tracheoesophageal septum is separating these two tubes. So up to the fourth week, the esophagus is very short, then it undergoes lengthening. It elongates rapidly due to the concomitant descent of the developing heart and lungs, and by seventh week it reaches the adult position. As a part of the differentiation of the any part of the GI tract, its lumen is completely filled with the epithelial lining, that is obliteration. Then canalization is a process that we discussed in the introduction part. So you can notice there the epithelial cells proliferate and obliterate the lumen partially or completely but temporarily, and there is recanalization by the way of the cavity formation which results in the mucosal folds at the end of the embryonic period. Then the failure of this recanalization may lead to stenosis. So the different parts of the esophagus, the epithelium and the glands lining the esophagus are derived from the endoderm of the foregut, that you can say postpharyngeal part of the foregut, whereas the striated muscle in the upper one third of the esophagus, they are mainly derived from the mesoderm, the somatic mesoderm, whereas smooth muscles from the splanchnic mesoderm. That's why upper one third of the esophagus is having the skeletal muscle which are voluntary, whereas the middle one third has a mixed type of muscles, both skeletal and smooth. The lower one third of the esophagus has smooth muscles which are derived from the surrounding splanchnic mesoderm. Then recanalization occurs at the end of the 8th week. Muscles are developed from the mesoderm that we have discussed. So let us see here how does the esophagus develops. You can see the cranial part of the postpharyngeal part of the foregut. You can see how does this different organs develop from the foregut tube, and you can see there the prepharyngeal part is along with the pharyngeal arches. It develops along with the pharyngeal arches, and it is involved in the formation of bones, muscles and cartilages of head and neck. So that we'll study in the pharyngeal apparatus. So coming to the development of the esophagus, first it is separated from the trachea by the tracheoesophageal septum. You can notice there the ventral wall of the pharynx has a laryngotracheal diverticulum separated from the esophagus by the tracheoesophageal septum, and then it is divided into an anterior laryngotracheal diverticulum, posterior esophagus proper that we have discussed, and the epithelium of the esophagus is derived from the endoderm. Muscles are from the mesoderm. Nerve supply is by the neural crest cells. So it undergoes the occlusion by the epithelial cells. Then the vacuoles appear there involved in the recanalization. So remember that it undergoes elongation to have a adult position. So these are the different steps in the development of esophagus. So firstly remember that esophagus develops from the post pharyngeal part of the foregut. Then you have outpoaching ventral diverticulum called as the laryngotracheal diverticulum. Then there is a formation of septum, laryngo or tracheoesophageal septum, that separates the esophagus from the developing trachea and lungs, and esophagus undergoes elongation. Then it follows the usual differentiation in the development of the gastrointestinal tract. So epithelium is derived from the endoderm, muscles are derived from the mesoderm, and there is formation of the epithelial plug which occlude the lumen, and there is appearance of these vacuoles which result in recanalization. Failure to recanalize results in stenosis. So that is about the development of the esophagus. So coming to the abnormalities in the development of the esophagus. So if there is an improper separation between the trachea and developing esophagus, there is a result of they result in communication between the two pipes, that is called as fistula. Fistula is an abnormal epithelial lined connection between the two tubes or cavities, we say, that is fistula. So there are different types of the tracheoesophageal fistula, but most common type is this one, where the proximal part is the blind portion, the distal portion come from the lower portion of the carina. Carina means tracheal bifurcation, and usually the tracheoesophageal fistula is associated with the esophageal atresia. So esophageal atresia and tracheoesophageal fistula are commonly seen in trisomies, most commonly in Edwards syndrome, but it is also observed in Down syndrome and the Patau syndrome, and it has association with the different congenital syndromes, mainly vectoral syndromes involving vertebral, anal canal, then tracheoesophageal renal anomalies, the vectoral association, and also it is seen in the syndrome called as Charge syndrome. So the tracheoesophageal fistula may occur in an isolated fashion, or it may be a part of congenital syndromes that you should remember. So that is about the esophagus and its anomalies. Next, you can see here the folds. Next, as we go, into the caudal part of the foregut, these folds become very, very important. When you observe here that we already discussed in the division of the gut tube, you can see the ventral part of the foregut is having the ventral mesenteric, dorsal part is having the dorsal mesenteric. With the development of the stomach here, now they are called as ventral mesogastrium, that will be here, and dorsal mesogastrium. Within the ventral mesogastrium, there is the development of liver, dividing the ventral mesogastrium into part between the anterior abdominal wall and liver, that is the falciform ligament, part between the liver and stomach, that forms lesser omentum, and part around the liver, that forms the peritoneum of the liver. So these are the folds of the gut tube, but remaining part of the gut tube like midgut and hindgut, they only have dorsal mesentery, they only have dorsal mesentery. Later, with the differentiation of the different gut tubes, they are called as mesentery proper, mesocolon, like that. But only part of the gut tube which is having both the folds is foregut. Remember that. Coming to the development of stomach, how does the stomach develop? Stomach develops as the fusiform dilatation in the caudal part of the foregut in the middle of the fourth week. Initially, it is lying in the midline and it shows the expansion. You can see here it is a fusiform dilation in the midline in sagittal plane, having the anterior border here and posterior border. Anterior border gives attachment to the ventral mesogastrium or ventral mesenteric, posterior border to the dorsal mesentery, or now it is called as dorsal mesogastrium. So these are the beginnings in the development of the stomach. Then what happens during the next 2 weeks? The left side wall of the, or you can say the posterior border of the fusiform dilatation undergoes a rapid growth, and it results in the formation of future greater and lesser curvature. So the primitive anterior border of the developing stomach, or the anterior border of the developing stomach, forms the lesser curvature, whereas the posterior border of the developing stomach forms the greater curvature, and it occurs due to the rotation. So during development, stomach undergoes 90-degree rightward rotation or 90-degree clockwise rotation. If you see from above, 90-degree clockwise rotation towards the right side. So the fusiform dilation which was having the anterior border and posterior border now has a right border and a left border because of this rotation along the longitudinal axis. You can see here primitive stomach is there, that is the dorsal border and ventral border, or anterior and posterior border. It goes to the right by the rotation up to 90 degrees, and now the anterior border is called as the right border, whereas the posterior border is called as left border. And initially it has a anterior, or you can say the right surface and left surface. Now the right surface becomes posterior surface, whereas the left surface becomes anterior surface. This is again reiterated by the fact that the posterior surface of the stomach is supplied by the right vagus nerve, and anterior surface of the stomach is supplied by the left vagus nerve. So this will tell you about the longitudinal rotation of the stomach, or you can say rotation of the stomach across or around the longitudinal axis. So that is about the rotation. Not only this one, it also undergoes rotation across the anteroposterior axis, resulting in this oblique J position of the adult stomach. You can notice there the pylorus junction moves towards left, the right, and cardiac towards left. You can notice there. So this is the rotation across or around the anteroposterior axis that you see here. So during the development, stomach evolves by two rotation, one along the longitudinal axis, one along the anteroposterior axis, that you can notice there. So longitudinal axis rotation resulting in the adult presenting part of the stomach, whereas the rotation across the anteroposterior axis results in the adult shape of the stomach. That you can see the position of stomach. Due to that rotation, the cranial end moves towards left and slightly downward. The caudal end moves to the right and upward. That's why the stomach has the pyloric orifice to the right of the median plane and ½ inch to the right of the median plane, whereas the cardiac orifice is an inch to the left of the median plane, and it has an anterosuperior surface and posterior-inferior surface. So here in this video, if you see the development of the stomach, it comes from the foregut and it results in the, you can notice there, the fusiform dilatation of the caudal part of the foregut. So I told you most of the gut tube is suspended only by the dorsal mesenteric. But which part of the gut tube has both dorsal and ventral mesenteric? You can see here foregut is having dorsal mesentery and ventral mesentery. With the developing stomach, now they are called as dorsal mesogastrium and the ventral mesogastrium. And due to the 90-degree rotation of the primitive stomach around the longitudinal axis, it results in the movement of the ventral mesogastrium towards the right side and dorsal mesogastrium towards the left side. And you can notice there the fusiform dilation has an anterior border and posterior border. The anterior border was giving attachment to ventral mesogastrium, the dorsal border to the dorsal mesogastrium. You can notice that this is the posterior border. You can see how it is undergoing the dilation and differential growth. You can see the dorsal mesentery and dorsal border growth is rapid compared to the ventral mesentery and ventral border, and there is a developing liver within the ventral mesogastrium by the hepatic bud that we'll discuss in the further slides. You can notice there. Now the ventral mesogastrium is divided into three parts: falciform ligament, lesser omentum, and peritoneum around liver. So the liver develops there within the ventral mesogastrium, and a spleen develops as the mesenchymal mass in the left layer of dorsal mesogastrium, and it moves to the left due to the rotation, and a part of the right peritoneal sac comes to lie behind the stomach and forming the omental bursa or lesser sac here. So now if you see from the inferior side, you can notice the developing liver is in the ventral mesogastrium, developing spleen is in the dorsal mesogastrium, and stomach undergoes rotation. Part of the ventral mesogastrium between liver and stomach is called as the lesser omentum. This is falciform ligament. This is the dorsal mesogastrium. It forms the greater omentum and also gastrosplenic ligament. So this is how the stomach rotation happens. And now the part of the right sided sac, it goes and lie behind the liver, lesser omentum, stomach, and it communicates with the greater sac via this epiploic foramina or foramina of Winslow. And this is how the lesser sac comes to lie posterior to stomach, allowing the expansion of the stomach after the food. That's why it's also called as omental bursa. And this part of the dorsal mesogastrium, which drapes over the transverse colon, It forms the greater omentum here. You can notice there. Yes, the part of the peritoneum or ventral mesogastrium between the liver and stomach is lesser omentum, and here this is the greater omentum, having the first layer becoming the fourth layer. You can notice here, first layer becomes the fourth layer and the second layer becomes the third layer. Second and third layer, first and fourth layers. And during development, it grows and drapes over the anterior part of the transverse colon, and there is fusion between the transverse mesocolon and the posterior layers of the greater omentum, resulting in the adult position of the lesser sac and adult limitations or boundaries of the lesser sac. So that is about the development of stomach. Coming to the congenital anomalies, one of them is the congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis involving the pyloric part due to defect in occlusion reconvolution resulting in stenosis, and usually the infant is male presenting with the projectile vomiting and weakness, non-bilious vomiting, because the occlusion is before the opening of the common bile duct. If the occlusion is beyond the opening of the common bile duct, in case of duodenal stenosis or atresia, there will be bilious vomiting. This is how you can differentiate which part of the GIT is having the stenosis. In case of congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, there will be projectile vomiting, non-bilious vomiting. Remember that. So next, going to the development of the omental bursa. As we have already seen, it is due to the small isolated cleft that you see in the right layer of the dorsal mesogastrium, and rotation of stomach converts this right sided part into a posterior sac or lesser sac. This bursa expands horizontally and upwards, lies between the stomach and posterior abdominal wall. Then coming to the development of spleen. Spleen develops from the mesenchyme within the dorsal mesogastrium, or you can say left layer of the dorsal mesogastrium. It develops around the 5th week. And I already told you in the introduction that spleen is not an endodermal derivative. It is a mesenchymal derivative. So effectively it is not a derivative of the endoderm of the foregut, but still supplied by the artery of the foregut. That you should remember. You can notice there it is in the median line during the development, along with the stomach and liver in the same line. Due to rotation, it goes and occupies the adult position, that is in the left hypochondrium. So it is lobulated, that indicates that the lobulation or notches in the upper part of the spleen that you see, they signify the fusion of the mesenchymal masses during development. The splenic notch usually seen in the upper border indicates the development of the spleen is by the fusion of mesenchymal masses, and it acts as a hematopoietic organ. Next, coming to the development of liver. So development of liver, it is a derivative of the caudal part of the foregut distal to the stomach. During development, we have already seen how it appears in the ventral mesogastrium between the stomach and anterior abdominal wall, within the ventral mesogastrium and septum transversum above. So the liver primordium appears as an endodermal outgrowth during the development from the distal end of the foregut, that we call it as hepatic bud. So endodermal outpouching from the caudal part of the foregut from the ventral side, that is the hepatic bud. You can see liver bud there. The hepatic bud grows into septum transversum which is forming the ventral mesentery. That is, ventral mesogastrium is formed by the septum transversum. It goes within that septum transversum. There you can see the hepatic bud is coming from the foregut, and it is growing in the septum transversum and undergoes differentiation to form the different parts. So the larger cranial part is forming the liver proper. The caudal smaller narrow part is forming the cystic bud, which forms the gallbladder and cystic duct. You can notice that is the cranial larger part and a caudal smaller part. So the endodermal cells of the hepatic bud proliferate, and you can notice here the cells within the hepatic bud, they proliferate and form the hepatic cylinders or cords, which differentiate into the plates of hepatocytes and resulting in the adult architecture of the hepatic globules, that is the chains of cells radiating from the central vein towards the periphery. So that is, you can say there, the hepatic cylinders, the hepatic cord, the hepatic bud will divide into right and left, and each right and left bud will form the cylinders, and they form the plates of cells which anastomose and branch and rebranch. And the hepatic cells, these hepatic cells anastomose around the vitelline veins, breaking the continuity of these veins, resulting in sinusoids. That's why when you see the histology of the liver, you will notice the central vein and having these hepatocords of hepatocytes running there. So this connect tissue framework, if you see the histology, it is hexagonal lobule. You can see the cords of hepatocytes will be there like this, radiating from the central vein, and a portion between the two cords of hepatocytes is occupied by the sinusoids. These sinusoids are derived from the white line veins. Remember, these hepatocytes are derived from the endoderm, sinusoids from the white line veins, and the connective tissue framework is derived from the septum transversum. You can see. So the liver grows rapidly, especially the right part of the liver lobe enlarges, and by 9th week liver forms the 10% of the total body weight. Initially the right and left lobes are same, but left lobe undergoes some degeneration, whereas the right lobe retains its fetal size. The hepatic cords, as we have discussed earlier, hepatic cords, epithelial lining of the intrahepatic portion are derived from the endoderm. The cells are derived from the endoderm. The fibrous tissue, hematopoietic tissue, the Kupffer cells are derived from the mesenchyme of the septum transversum, whereas the hepatic sinusoids are derived from the vitelline veins. And hematopoiesis begins around 6th week in the liver, giving its a characteristic dark color. And hepatic cells begin to form the bile during the 12th week only. So coming to the development of the liver there, if you see caudal to the stomach, ventral hepatic bud is there. These are tissue buds. They are from there. You can see liver, gallbladder, and even the ventral pancreatic bud has a close relation with that. This is the hepatic bud called as diverticulum, endodermal outpouching. It gives rise to liver, gallbladder, and biliary duct system. It has a larger cranial part, hepatic bud, and a smaller, narrow cystic bud. You can notice there. That is the liver. This is the gallbladder, and a duct portion, it forms the common bile duct. So hepatocytes, they form the buds, cylinders, cords, plates of cells. So this is how the Bud will differentiate into cords of hepatocytes. They form plates, anastomos, branch and rebranch, having the radiating appearance of the hepatocytes in the hepatic lobule architecture. And other, the Kupffer cells and kind tissue, they are derived from the septum transosome. Sinusoids are by the vitelline veins. You can notice there, that is the development of liver. And here you can see the development of the gallbladder with the cystic duct. The right and left hepatic ducts join to form common hepatic duct. Common hepatic duct joins the cystic duct to form common bile duct. So coming to the peritoneum around the liver, as I already told you, liver is developing within the mesogastrium, derived from the septum transosome, and it divides that into the part of the mesoderm or the ventral mesogastrium between the liver and the foregut, and liver and the anterior abdominal wall. So between the liver and foregut it forms the lesser omentum, whereas between the liver and ventral abdominal wall or anterior abdominal wall it forms the falciform ligament. You can notice there, the liver is going into the septum transosome, and later it forms these parts, the falciform ligament, lesser omentum. Remaining forms the peritoneum around the liver. You can notice there. And coming to the development of the biliary apparatus, as we have already discussed, the smaller caudal part that you can notice here, that is forming the gallbladder, and the narrow duct-like portion which is separating the hepatic diverticulum from the foregut forms the bile duct. So the stalk connecting the hepatic and cystic duct is now called as common bile duct. It opens into the ventral aspect of the duodenum, but due to rotation of the ventral pancreatic bud along with the axial rotation of the duodenum, it opens dorsally into the second part of the duodenum. And after 13th week, the bile, at the 12th week there is secretion of bile, and after 13th week there will be entrance of the bile into the duodenum, giving the green color to the meconium or intestinal contents. Meconium is fetal feces, we say meconium, that is the collection of all the waste materials from the intestinal part or the GIT meconium. And coming to the abnormalities in the development of the gallbladder, sometimes you will see the gallbladder is folded upon itself in the form of the Phrygian cap, or sometimes you will see a septum within the gallbladder that is called as septate gallbladder, or sometimes there will be two gallbladder that we call it as duplicate gallbladder, and it also forms the diverticulum within the gallbladder and a Hartmann's pouch coming near the cystic duct. So that is about development of liver and gallbladder. And you can also see the biliary atresia, that is the developmental anomaly resulting in the collection of the bile within the gallbladder. It will not reach the duodenum due to atresia. And coming to the some of the derivatives which have contribution from both the foregut and midgut, like duodenum and also pancreas. Pancreas, some books say it completely developed from the foregut, but some authors mention the ventral pancreatic bud come from the junction between the foregut and midgut. Let us see that in detail. So duodenum developed from the two sources. The proximal half is by the foregut, the distal half is by the midgut. So this is the foregut portion, this is the midgut portion, then junction is there between them. So the first and second part of the duodenum, the second part of duodenum up to the opening of the common bile duct is derived from the foregut, and second part of the duodenum below the opening of the common bile duct, third and fourth portions are derived from the midgut. So during development, the duodenum is in the form of a primitive duodenal loop in the sagittal plane or in the median plane, suspended by the dorsal mesentery. Now it is called as dorsal mesoduodenum. It is there, and As I told you, loop is in sagittal plane. The apex is formed by the junction between the foregut and midgut. And there are three phases in the development of duodenum, that is rotation, fixation, and axial rotation. So rotation. So during development, there will be clockwise rotation of the stomach and return of herniated intestinal loops from the physiological hernia that pushes the duodenum towards right side due to rotation of stomach, and also the return of herniated intestinal loops during physiological hernia. What is the physiological hernia? What is the need of the intestinal loops to herniate? That you will study in the midgut development. Just remember that the duodenum undergoes 90-degree clockwise rotation or rightward rotation just like stomach due to rotation of stomach and return of the herniated contents from the physiological hernia around 10th week. So these things make the duodenal loop to fall on the right side. And then there will be fixation. The mesoduodenum, that is the right part of the mesoduodenum, which is in contact with the posterior abdominal wall, it disappears by the process called as zygosis. See, all the retroperitoneal organs, what you see in the adults, they were peritoneal during development, but they lose their peritoneal covering on the posterior side by the process called as zygosis. So this is how the duodenum, which is peritoneal here, becomes retroperitoneal here by the way of zygosis. So this is one more picture showing here horizontal section of the duodenum and axial rotation. So after the fixation, rotation and fixation, it undergoes axial rotation where the duodenum rotates along its vertical axis, resulting in the movement of the ventral pancreatic bud towards the dorsal pancreatic bud. You can notice here, you can see this is the hepatic bud, cystic bud, and ventral pancreatic bud, dorsal pancreatic bud. Due to rotation, axial rotation of the duodenum, the ventral pancreatic bud, which was here, it moves and joins with the dorsal pancreatic bud, resulting in the pancreas. You can notice here the ventral pancreatic bud, dorsal pancreatic bud, due to rotation, axial rotation of the duodenum. And you can notice there the mesoduodenum persists near the small portion of the first part of the duodenum, which appears as the duodenal cap. So now you can understand what is the reason for appearance of the duodenal cap. It is due to persistence of this mesoduodenum near the first part, results in the duodenal cap on the contrast X-ray, that is the barium meal follow through. And the dual artery supply of the duodenum reiterates the fact that it is derived from both foregut and midgut. The proximal half of the duodenum, which is developed from the foregut, is supplied by the celiac trunk branches, that is the gastroduodenal artery, resulting in superior pancreaticoduodenal artery, retroduodenal artery. And the distal half of the duodenum, which is derived from the midgut, is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery branches like inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery. And some anomalies of the duodenum. Incomplete recanalization results in the duodenal stenosis. It depends at what level the duodenal stenosis is there. If it is beyond the opening of the common bile duct, there will be bilious vomiting. Whereas in pyloric stenosis, we have seen the projectile non-bilious vomiting. Whereas in duodenal stenosis, beyond the opening of common bile duct, you will see bilious vomiting, and you will also see duodenal atresia, that is due to failure of the recanalization, and it occurs always distal to the opening of the hepatopancreatic ampulla, and the fetus or the infant will have the biliary vomiting. And you can see the duodenal atresia presents as the double bubble sign on the radiogram. This is duodenum and stomach. You can see the two bubbles there on USG. Double bubble sign indicates the duodenal atresia. You can notice there, this is the duodenal atresia. This is duodenal. These are different types. And this is the duodenal atresia. So that's about the development of duodenum. Next, moving to the development of pancreas. So, what are the phases involved in the development of pancreas? The formation of pancreatic buds, the fusion of the buds, and histogenesis of pancreas with the pancreatic duct. So, the development of pancreas, how does these pancreatic buds form? Pancreas appears as two buds, that is the ventral pancreatic bud and dorsal pancreatic bud, from the caudal part of the foregut or junction of the foregut and midgut. You can notice there the ventral pancreatic bud come from the junction between the foregut and midgut, whereas the dorsal pancreatic bud is larger, come from the dorsal side of the caudal side of the foregut. And you can notice that the dorsal bud is larger, appears first, and lies cranial to the ventral pancreatic bud. Ventral pancreatic bud is smaller and lies caudal to the larger dorsal pancreatic bud. And due to rotation of the stomach and duodenum and axial rotation of the duodenum, which carries the ventral bud towards the dorsal pancreatic bud, that we have already discussed with the context of the development of duodenum. And you can see the ventral bud comes to lie posterior to the dorsal bud due to axial rotation and diffuse. And this is the dorsal bud and this is the ventral bud, and the duct, this is the duct of the dorsal pancreatic bud, that's duct of the ventral pancreatic bud. They have a oblique communication between them, forming the definitive main pancreatic duct. So main pancreatic duct is formed by the duct of ventral bud, duct of dorsal bud, and a oblique communication between them. Whereas the proximal portion of the duct of dorsal pancreatic bud, it forms accessory pancreatic duct or duct of Santorini. You can see the duct of ventral and ventral bud and distal part of the duct of dorsal bud form the main pancreatic bud opening in the major duodenal papilla. You can see here, this is the duct of ventral pancreatic bud, duct of dorsal pancreatic bud, oblique communication between them. Whereas the proximal part of the duct of the ventral pancreatic bud is the accessory pancreatic duct or duct of Santorini opening at the minor duodenal papilla. You can see here, dorsal bud forms the most of the pancreas, ventral bud gives rise to the uncinate process and lower part of the head of the pancreas, dorsal part forms the upper part of the head, neck, body and tail of the pancreas. And just like the duodenum, the pancreas also becomes retroperitoneal due to zygosis. So you can see there, coming to the hetogenesis. So the parenchyma of the pancreas gland is derived from the endoderm. The acini begins to develop from the cell clusters around the tubules, and some cells separate from these tubules and they form the islets of Langerhans. The connective tissue sheath and the septa of the gland within the serous part, exocrine part, is derived from the splanchnic mesenchyme. The glucagon and somatostatin hormones are produced by the cells before the insulin secreting cells. Insulin secretion begins by the 10th week. So here you can see, you can notice there is the rotation of the midgut and the other parts of the gut tube. You can see. So here is the development of ventral pancreatic bud and dorsal pancreatic bud that you are seeing with the duodenal loop. You can see the ventral pancreatic bud is very much near to the hepatic bud. That's why the common bile duct and the main pancreatic duct have a common opening in the second part of the duodenum at the major duodenal papilla. So this is the ventral pancreatic bud and they undergo axial rotation. So ventral pancreatic bud goes and fuses with the dorsal pancreatic bud. So that is about the development of the foregut derivatives. If you have any suggestions and comments, please write to us. Thank you very much.